From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day. Radio Pilipinas World Service can also be heard on shortwave broadcast through the shortwave facilities of the United States Agency for Global Media or Voice of America on the following shortwave frequencies: 15.640 MHz, 17.750 MHz, and 21.720 MHz. I'm your host, Leo Magpayo, and this is Dateline Malacañang. Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., speaking from Canada on Wednesday, committed to sustaining the country's economic momentum following the Philippines' elevation to upper middle income status. The president said the milestone reflects the effectiveness of reforms implemented over the past 4 years and signals broader opportunities for Filipino families. President Marcos emphasized that the new classification affirms the country's resilience amid global uncertainties, citing steady economic growth, a broadly stable currency, and long-term structural reforms. He credited the hard work of Filipinos for driving the nation's progress and said the upgrade is expected to boost investor confidence, attract more businesses, and generate higher quality jobs. The chief executive stressed that economic gains must translate into real improvements in daily life, noting that growth should open doors, expand opportunities, and help families build better futures. President Marcos said his administration will continue implementing policies to ensure that the benefits of development are felt across communities. The World Bank confirmed the Philippines' shift to upper middle income status in its latest assessment, reporting a gross national income or GNI per capita of $4,850, above the $4,636 threshold. The upgrade was driven by sustained expansion across all major industries, with gross domestic product or GDP growing an average of 5.8% from 2021 to 2025 and GNI per capita rising 8.5% in 2025.
For years, Filipinos have worked hard to build this country. Today, the world has taken notice. The Philippines has officially become an upper middle income country. After nearly 4 decades as a lower middle income country since 1987, this milestone affirms that the economic policies that we have pursued over the past 4 years have been effective. Our steady economic growth, broadly stable currency, and long-term reforms have strengthened our economy even amid global uncertainties. It validates the progress that we have made and the resilience of the Filipino people. It is also a vote of confidence in our country's future. Greater confidence means more investments. More investments means more businesses, better quality jobs, and more opportunities for Filipino families. This is worth celebrating because economic progress is not meant to stay on paper. It is meant to open doors, put food on the table, and give every Filipino the chance to build a better life. That is the work that we will continue to do until every family feels the benefit of our country's progress.
As Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney began the Philippine leaders' official engagements in Canada with a private tete-a-tete, underscoring the very close and deepening defense, security, and economic ties between Manila and Ottawa. Prime Minister Carney highlighted the strong human connection between the two nations, noting that more than 1 million Canadians have Filipino heritage. He said this shared community provides a powerful foundation for building together toward peace and prosperity, calling it a tremendous opportunity to further tighten bilateral ties. President Marcos, for his part, described the Philippines-Canada people-to-people relationship as a very solid basis for strengthening and deepening the partnership. He welcomed Canada's expanding engagement in the Indo-Pacific. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, and Asia, saying it aligns with the Philippines' efforts to promote regional stability and cooperation. The leaders' one-on-one meeting set the tone for the days succeeding bilateral engagements, reaffirming the long-standing friendship bet.
And it is a timely visit because of the increasing engagement of Canada, not only in the Indo-Pacific, but in ASEAN and in Asia in general. And those are elements that we will hope to further discuss. We work from a very solid basis on our people-to-people relations, and the growing number of Filipinos who work and live in Canada, approaching 1 million now. And that is a very firm basis because all the way that Filipinos have been accepted and assimilated into the Canadian society, and for that we are very grateful, and that is what we hope to build on and make stronger and deeper after this visit.
Was Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney met Thursday in Vancouver, holding bilateral talks aimed at strengthening cooperation between the Philippines and Canada. The meeting at the Vancouver Convention Center focused on expanding collaboration across economic, political, and people-to-people pillars, areas both leaders described as central to the long-standing partnership between the two nations. President Marcos underscored the deep cultural and social ties that anchor the relationship, noting that nearly 1 million Filipinos now live and work in Canada. Prime Minister Carney echoed the sentiment, highlighting President Marcos's leadership as this year's Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN chair, at what he called a critical time for Asia and for the world. He praised the Philippines' shared values with Canada and emphasized the importance of tightening cultural and economic ties. President Marcos is in Vancouver for a 4-day official visit aimed at reinforcing the Philippines' partnership with Canada, which dates back to 1949. As of June this year, Canada hosts nearly 1 million Filipinos, making it the second largest home for overseas Filipinos worldwide. Economic ties continue to grow. Bilateral merchandise trade reached $3.4 billion in 2025, up 7.4% from the previous year. Trade in services also expanded to $3.2 billion in 2024, a 19.9% increase from 2023. Both countries are accelerating negotiations toward a free trade agreement, or FTA, while Canada continues to support the Philippines through long-standing development cooperation, providing more than $1 billion in official development assistance over the years. The two leaders reaffirmed their commitment to maintaining close cooperation as enduring partners, with both sides expressing confidence that the visit will pave the way for deeper collaboration in the years ahead.
Dateline Malacañang.
Meanwhile, the Philippines and Canada have entered a new chapter in their relationship, officially elevating their bilateral ties to a strategic partnership during President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.'s visit to Vancouver on Thursday, Canada time. The announcement came after President Marcos and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney met at the Vancouver Convention Center, where both leaders committed to expanding cooperation across defense, trade, energy, and critical minerals, key sectors amid rising geopolitical and economic challenges in the Indo-Pacific. In a joint statement, President Marcos confirmed the upgrade in relations, saying foreign ministers from both countries will craft a plan of action to guide the rollout of the partnership and ensure both nations remain future-ready in responding to global shifts. This marks the first official visit of a Philippine president to Canada in more than a decade. President Marcos and Carney agreed to deepen defense and security cooperation, accelerate trade and investment efforts, strengthen collaboration in energy and natural resources, and boost economic resilience and people-to-people exchanges. The president highlighted recent milestones in defense cooperation as proof of growing trust between Manila and Ottawa, noting that robust security ties are essential to maintaining peace and stability in the region. The two leaders also discussed the Philippines' upcoming chairship of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, and reaffirmed shared goals under Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy, including efforts to maintain regional peace and stability. Beyond security, the strategic partnership aims to expand economic cooperation, enhancing supply chains, increasing trade and investment flows, and strengthening collaboration in energy and critical minerals.
Today, I am pleased to announce the elevation of our bilateral relationship to a strategic partnership. We have tasked our foreign ministers to draw up a plan of action to pursue our shared commitment to work together in adapting to shifting global realities, addressing shared challenges, and building capacities for future-ready partnership. We recognize that robust defense and security cooperation underpins the strong momentum of our relations. Recent milestones in this pillar underscore the shared commitment of our countries in ensuring that our peoples continue to live in peaceful and secure regions. We translate these aspirations into tangible and operational commitments. We welcome the signing of the Status of Visiting Forces Agreement in November 2025 in Manila, the signing of the Mutual Logistics Support Arrangement, and the Statement of Intent on Strengthening Defense Cooperation between the Philippines and Canada just 2 weeks ago in Ottawa. A strategic partnership is defined not just by deep and close relations, but also by the reliability of that partnership.
That was Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney on Thursday, Canada time, reaffirmed their commitment to conclude negotiations for a Philippines-Canada Free Trade Agreement or FTA before the end of 2026. Speaking during a joint press statement at the Vancouver Convention Center, President Marcos said both sides agreed to accelerate work on the bilateral FTA even as negotiations continue for the Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEAN-Canada trade deal. Prime Minister Carney noted strong progress in the talks and expressed confidence that the agreement can be finalized within the target timeline. He said the FTA represents enormous opportunity for both countries, acknowledging the Philippines as one of the fastest-growing economies in Asia and globally. During his official visit, President Marcos is also set to meet Canadian business leaders from the mining, IT, BPM, and energy sectors to explore deeper commercial ties. He noted that Canadian companies already have a strong presence in the Philippines and expressed optimism that more investments will follow as cooperation continues to grow.
Tomorrow, I will meet with several business leaders and key players in the Canadian mining, IT, BPM, and energy sectors. Canadian businesses, including those in said sectors, have been largely successful in the Philippines. I look forward to discussing more opportunities for deeper commercial ties between our two countries. Prime Minister Carney and I reaffirmed our commitment to conclude the negotiations for a bilateral free trade agreement this year, as we also negotiate the ASEAN-Canada Free Trade Agreement. We renewed our commitment to increase our bilateral trade, stand against economic coercion, and build a resilient supply chain.
Was Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Thursday, Canada time, expressed gratitude to Ottawa for its continued support for a rules-based order in the South China Sea and for recognizing the 2016 Arbitral Tribunal ruling as final and legally binding. Speaking during a joint press statement with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney at the Vancouver Convention Centre, the President acknowledged Canada's consistent stance on upholding international law, particularly the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea or UNCLOS. President Marcos also welcomed Canada's expanding engagement in the Indo-Pacific through its Indo-Pacific Strategy or IPS, saying both countries share a commitment to maintaining peace and stability in the region. The Philippine President thanked Canada for deploying its Dark Vessel Detection or DVD program to the Philippines, which has strengthened maritime domain awareness and efforts against illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. President Marcos said the Philippines is interested in continuing the program's implementation in its waters. Prime Minister Carney emphasized the role of middle powers like Canada in reinforcing the international rules-based order through partnerships with like-minded countries. He said such cooperation strengthens both nations and the global system they rely on. President Marcos and Carney also discussed expanding defense and security cooperation under the newly established Philippines-Canada Strategic Partnership. Carney said Canada is preparing to ratify the Status of Visiting Forces Agreement, which will allow both armed forces to train and operate more closely through joint exercises.
We spoke about the importance of peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific and Canada's increasing engagement in the region under its Indo-Pacific strategy. I commend the IPS and emphasize the importance on building its initiatives both at the bilateral and multilateral levels. I also thank Canada for its Dark Vessel Detection Program, which was deployed to the Philippines under the strategy to aid the country in combating illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, and increase maritime domain awareness. I conveyed keen interest in the continuation of the DVD program in Philippine waters. As the Philippines celebrates the 10th anniversary of the 2016 Arbitral Tribunal Award on the South China Sea, I thank Canada for its vocal and consistent support for a rules-based order in the South China Sea under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, and in upholding the arbitral award as final and legally binding.
That was Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Also on Thursday, Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney witnessed the signing of 4 major agreements designed to strengthen cooperation between Manila and Ottawa in energy, labor, tourism, and cultural development. The signing ceremony was held at the Vancouver Convention Center shortly after the two leaders concluded their bilateral meeting. Among the agreements signed was a joint declaration of intent on energy and natural resources, aimed at deepening collaboration in sustainable energy development and responsible resource management. The two countries also formalized a Memorandum of Understanding or MOU on tourism cooperation, along with a 5-year MOU on cultural cooperation covering 2026 to 2031. A second joint declaration of intent on labor and migration cooperation was likewise inked, signaling both nations' commitment to building a stronger, mutually beneficial talent pipeline. President Marcos welcomed the signing of the agreements, saying these initiatives will help both countries harness their strong people-to-people ties and expand opportunities for workers, cultural practitioners, and industries on both sides. The signing of the 4 cooperation deals underscores the Philippines and Canada's sustained commitment to strengthening their long-standing bilateral relationship while opening new pathways for economic growth, cultural exchange, and sustainable development.
I am also glad to have witnessed today the signing of bilateral understandings and declarations of cooperation in the areas of tourism, culture, and labor and migration. These agreements will help us harness the strong people-to-people ties between our two countries as we jointly build capacities and create a mutually beneficial talent pipeline for the future.
That was Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Still on Thursday, Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney made a surprise visit to a Jollibee branch in downtown Vancouver, giving the iconic Filipino fast food chain a moment in the international spotlight. The two leaders stopped by the Jollibee store on 833 Granville Street after wrapping up their official engagements at the Vancouver Convention Center. President Marcos and Carney placed an order, posed with the Jollibee mascot, and spent time chatting with staff and customers. The Vancouver branch, opened in March 2022, is Jollibee's first store in the city and its 23rd location in Canada. The chain has become a familiar gathering place for Filipinos abroad and continues to attract a growing number of foreign customers. The visit highlighted Jollibee's expanding global footprint and its enduring appeal among overseas Filipinos. For the Filipino community in Canada, the stop also offered a warm and familiar taste of home during the president's official visit.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and his delegation met Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and members of his cabinet on Thursday Canada time for an expanded bilateral meeting that focused on strengthening the rapidly growing partnership between the Philippines and Canada. Both sides noted the unprecedented momentum in bilateral relations, welcoming major gains in economic cooperation, defense and security ties, and people-to-people exchanges, including ongoing negotiations for the Philippines-Canada Free Trade Agreement, which both countries aim to conclude this year. President Marcos emphasized the need to build resilient supply chains, diversify resources, and enhance regional connectivity, He also welcomed Canada's participation in the Luzon Economic Corridor, including planned investments in artificial intelligence and advanced manufacturing. The meeting featured detailed discussions on proposals for closer collaboration in maritime security, cybersecurity, energy cooperation, and labor mobility, areas both governments identified as critical to long-term stability and shared prosperity. President Marcos and Carney also highlighted the central role of people-to-people linkages in strengthening bilateral ties. Canada is home to more than 1 million Filipinos and ranks as the Philippines' fifth largest source of international visitors, underscoring the deep social and cultural connections between the two nations. The expanded meeting set the tone for intensified cooperation under the newly elevated Philippines-Canada Strategic Partnership.
Dateline Malacañang.
In other news, Senator Joel Villanueva on Thursday said the Department of Finance or DOF's move to reduce remittance fees for overseas Filipino workers or OFWs should add fresh urgency to a Senate-approved measure designed to protect every peso sent home by Filipinos abroad. Villanueva said the DOF initiative reinforces the need to enact Senate Bill number or SBN 1917 or the OFW's Remittance Protection Act, which the Senate passed on third and final reading in March. Finance Secretary Frederick Go earlier noted that remittance fees can take away 6 to 10% of the money migrant workers sent home, prompting the government to seek ways to cut costs. Villanueva, the principal sponsor and author of SBN 1917, said, "The measure requires remittance service providers to clearly disclose all fees and foreign exchange rates to prevent unreasonable deductions. It also bans sudden or unilateral fee changes, mandates stakeholder consultations before adjustments, and imposes penalties on violators." Villanueva said the OFW Remittance Protection Bill ensures that the hard-earned money of our modern-day heroes is protected through transparent remittance costs, stronger consumer safeguards, and greater accountability from financial service providers. He added that OFWs keep the Philippine economy strong and deserve a system that makes every remittance secure, affordable, and accessible. The Senate approved SBN 1917 on March 16th alongside other measures aimed at protecting OFWs and Filipino families. Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas or BSP data showed cash remittances hit a record $35.63 billion in 2025, up 3.3% from 2024. Personal remittances reached $3.04 billion in April 2026, with inflows continuing to grow despite global economic headwinds. However, the World Bank's Remittance Prices Worldwide Monitor reported that sending money across borders still costs an average of 6.36%, underscoring the need for cheaper and more transparent remittance channels.
Dateline Malacañang.
In other developments, the Philippine National Police or PNP is looking into setting up help desks for bullying-related complaints as part of efforts to support the Department of Education or DepEd in ensuring the safety and welfare of learners nationwide. The initiative follows the directive of President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and Interior Secretary John Vic Remulla for government agencies to make all schools safe, secure, and conducive to learning. PNP Chief General Jose Melencio Nartatis Jr. said, bullying requires immediate intervention to prevent cases from escalating into more serious offenses. He noted that the proposed help desk would help complement DepEd's ongoing measures, including mandatory bag inspections and the newly approved school counselor positions. The Civil Service Commission, or CSC, recently approved the creation of school counselor posts, which are expected to strengthen mental health services for students. Nartatis said the PNP can reinforce these efforts through help desks staffed by personnel from the Women and Children Protection Desk present in every police station. He assured the public that the PNP will actively participate in anti-bullying efforts, particularly inside schools.
Dateline Malacañang.
And finally, a new Pulse Asia survey reveals near unanimous support for making rooftop solar more affordable, with 93% of Filipinos saying rising electricity demand makes the technology necessary. In a statement released Thursday, Pulse Asia said nearly all Filipinos agree that the government should make rooftop solar more affordable, reflecting strong public backing for policies that expand access to renewable energy, reduce electricity costs, and improve the country's energy security. The survey found 97% of respondents are concerned about current energy challenges, while 77% recognize the Philippines' heavy dependence on imported oil, coal, and natural gas. Two-thirds, or 66%, identified expanding renewable energy as the most effective long-term solution. Among all renewable measures, making rooftop solar affordable emerged as the top priority. However, affordability remains the biggest barrier. Pulse Asia noted that while support is high, Filipinos believe lower costs, better access to information, and affordable financing are needed to make rooftop solar widely accessible. The survey showed 91% of respondents believe widespread adoption is achievable if financing options become more affordable. Meanwhile, 85% view rooftop solar not as a luxury, but as a necessity.
Dateline Malacañang.
Before we conclude our program, Radyo Pilipinas World Service of the Presidential Broadcast Service can be heard over the following shortwave frequencies: 15.640 MHz, 17.750 MHz, and 21.720 MHz. Radyo Pilipinas World Service is also live on audio streaming. Just download Evox PBS Receiver on your Google Play Store or the App Store from your Apple phone. You can also visit our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Just type in and search for Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Kindly subscribe, like, and share our post as well. And that concludes this edition of Dateline Malacañang. For Radyo Pilipinas World Service, this is Leo Magpayo. Good day and stay safe.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.